In Chapter 8, we'll take a different tack and explore the parametric tools in AutoCAD. You will not be using your template for the Chapter 8 drawing. On page 8-5, you're instructed to select New. Okay. And make sure you click the radio button in front of Metric. This is a metric drawing. If you want to circle step 3 on page 8-5, then you won't forget that. Right-click on Snap or Grid and go to Drafting Settings, which are also called Snap Settings. Verify that the Snap and Grid are both set to 10. That means you're in metric units. All right. Then go to Layer Properties and create 3 quick layers. Object, Center, and Construction. All right. The object layer is going to be blue, and it will have a line weight of 0.30 millimeters. So I'll click the word default under line weight. There we go. Center is going to be red. And it will need a center line type. Load, find it here. OK, pick center again, and OK. And yes, that one has to be red. Construction just gets to say white. So close with the X. And click Save As right now and save it as your 3 initials, Chapter 8. On the bottom of the page, it says to make your construction layer current. And down here in the status bar, it says have only grid turned on. Okay, grid you are on. The rest of you guys are so off. There you go. Page 8-6 explains something about parametric drawings. In parametric programs, you start out with a rough sketch or rough outline of the part, whereas in AutoCAD you draw things to their exact finished dimensions. In parametric programs, you draw something approximately the size it'll be, and then you put these parametric dimensions on it, and you can double-click on the text of the dimension. When you change the text, the size of the sketch changes. It may seem strange, but you start this drawing with a couple of little old circles like this. Excuse me. Darn it. Didn't want to do that. And a line, and make sure the line is not horizontal. Okay. That's how we're going to start this drawing. Yes, and it's important that you go through the text and follow the steps, because you're going to add these constraints to the drawing, and every time you add a constraint, it adds a little symbol to your drawing, and I grade the drawing by counting up the number of symbols at the end, so you need to go through the steps in the textbook for this one. Page 8-8 takes you to the Parametric tab and shows you there are geometric constraints that can be shown or hidden, and there are dimensional constraints, and they can show or be hidden. On page 8-9, you find a description of all the geometric constraints, what they do. That one's worth reading. On page 8-10, we apply our first geometric constraint. Step 1, select horizontal, that's got to be you. Step 2, select the line. So that made it horizontal, and see, it also added the little symbol. Those are the kind of symbols that I will count up when I check your drawing file. Step 3, select coincident, that's you. Select the large circle and select the left endpoint of the line. Well, they didn't want the line to move. They wanted the circle to move. So on page 8-11, they tell you to come up and undo that. Okay. There's about 2 or 3 times in this lesson where they have you undo something or do something, then undo something, and then do it in another way, I guess is what I'm trying to say. We want to keep this line in place. So we're going to add a fixed constraint. That would be you. Okay. There. Then we can go to step 9 and select coincident, select the circle, and select the endpoint, and the circle moves to the line. That's what we want. Page 8-12. Select the linear dimension, okay, and somewhere inside the display area here, right-click and select Object. Then just click this line and you can put the dimension above it or below it, doesn't matter. When it's first clicked into place, it's all highlighted like this, so you can type in a value. On the top of page 813, it says the desired value is 96. Oh, I really made it too long, didn't I? So that's the size of the line. In step 6, you are instructed to get the coincident constraint, okay, and select the other circle, and then the right endpoint of the line. On the bottom of the page, they're telling you you could double-click on this dimension right here, and you could change the value to 120 and try other numbers, but just make sure you put it back to 96 at the end. On page 8-14, they want you to select line. You could go to the Home tab to do that, but you could also just type L on your keyboard and enter. None of these lines will be perpendicular to each other, and none of them will be horizontal or parallel. Just draw something like this. Great. Looks like the scar on Harry Potter's forehead. This is going to be one of those things that you do and undo. On the top of page 815, it says to select parallel. Where are you? Right here. Select parallel. Select the line segment to the left, that would be you, and select the horizontal line, that's down here. And then, oh no, it broke apart. All right. They didn't want it to do that, so undo and turn to page 8-16. On 8-16, they are using this great big button here called Auto Constrain. And you are to use a blue window from left to right to select the 3 lines. Click here, and enter. And when you press enter, it actually added a couple of those coincident constraints right there that'll hold these corners together. So now you can do parallel and select this line and the horizontal line. Great. And then you can select parallel and select the line segment on the right and the horizontal line. And at the bottom of page 817, you are instructed to select perpendicular. On the top of page 8-18, first pick the line segment on the right, and then this little short line. Okay. So now these lines need to move down to the circles. What's going to happen is the circles are going to move up to the lines, and then when you apply dimensions to the circles, that'll bring them back down to size. Select tangent. Select the circle on the right and the line segment that is above it. That made that circle grow, didn't it? On page 8-19, you are instructed to select your radius dimension. Click on the circle, place the dimension, and type 20. That will bring it down. Good. The bottom of the page says to select tangent again. I'm on 8-20 now. And select the circle and the other line segment. Okay. This one will also get a radius dimension. Place the dimension and type 30. Now we are going to use coincident. We are not going to use trim right here or extend right here. And yours may look different than this. Maybe both of yours need to extend, or both of them need to trim, but we are not going to use those two commands. We are going to use coincident for lines that are too long or too short. Step 26. Select the coincident constraint. In step 27, says to get the end point of this line right here. Step 28 says to right-click and select Object. And step 29 says to select the circle. Great. So if your line is too short, it'll bring it to the circle. If your line is too long, it'll bring it back to the circle. You have to do the same thing on the other side. Coincident. Select the end point of the line. Let's make that a little bigger. Right-click and select Object and select the circle. Okay, you need one more linear dimension. Remember to right-click and select Object. Object. Okay. And select this top line and type 60 and enter. Turn to page 8-22. Let's zoom in on this area right here. You don't have to click on the Home tab to get the ARC command. Just type A and enter. And then they just have you draw it up here somewhere. Click, click for the middle point, click for the end point. The first thing you have to do is put a radius dimension on it. A radius of 15 and enter. Okay. On page 8-23, step 39 says to select coincident. Select the top end point of the arc and this point. That hooks it on right here. Now it's attached. Then select tangent. Where are you? Turn the page to 824. Select the arc. Select the arc. And select the line. Great. Now we have to use coincident to trim this arc. Step 45. Select coincident. Step 46. In step 46, you need to add something. It tells you to select the right end point of the arc, but it doesn't tell you that you need to right-click and select Object before you select the line. I need to select Object first, then the line. So in step 46, between the two directions in heavy bold letters, you might want to put in a note that says right-click. Page 8-25. You can get into the mirror command by typing MI and entering. Select this much stuff with a blue window and enter. In other words, the line right here, the arc right here, the line right there. And enter. Be sure you see that hint in step 4. It says to switch on Object Snap in the status bar. Then you can pick both ends of the horizontal line, but you want Object Snaps when you see those green boxes. Otherwise, the points you pick might not be accurate. And then remember, you just press Enter and it comes back. Okay. On page 8-26, type TR and enter. That's for trim. Okay. And then you have to enter again to select all, so everything's a cutting edge. Trim these parts of the circle. And these sections of the line. Okay. Do not erase these two little lines, this one and this one. Or the horizontal line down the middle. Just leave these lines on the construction layer, because if you erase that line, then you lose your little perpendicular symbol. And remember, I'm going to check this drawing by counting up all the symbols. So those lines stay there. This little short one, this little short one, this horizontal one. What's happening next? It says sometimes when you do this, when you do the trim, some of the constraints are removed. So on page 8-28, they're telling you to go to Auto Constrain again and select everything with a blue window. Click, click, and enter. Yes, a lot more of them popped up, didn't they? On page 8-29, it says to add the radial dimensions back to the arcs. They left when I trimmed them. Okay, just enter. It's got the right value. Because we didn't change their size. You need those dimensions back there, and you'll see why in a moment. Okay, you do have to go to the Home tab, so you can select some lines and put them on the object layer. So I have to go to Home tab for that. I'm going to turn on my line weight here just so these lines show up in the demonstration. That's this little button right here in the status bar if you want your line weight to show. In Properties, up here, select Match Properties. So select a blue one, and then select the rest of the outline. Okay. Sometimes people have a hard time getting hold of this arc. If I try to click it over here, that's the dimension. That's the part with the dimension. So I would have to click it over here, okay, where it doesn't have that dimension arc on it. That arc right here is attached to the dimension, and there's nothing I can do about it. Change to the object layer now. And draw 4 circles. 1, 2, 3, 4. These 4 circles get the diameter dimensions you see at the bottom of page 8-30. So go back to the parametric tab. Where are you? Here we are. Go back to the parametric tab because you want parametric dimensions. Diameter. First one is 20. Diameter. Second one is 30. Then 10. And then another 20. All right. We're ready to turn to page 8-31 and use the concentric constraint. Concentric. And pick these 2 circles on the left. Okay. Piles them up and it gives them 2 concentric symbols. Then concentric. And pick either one of these circles, it doesn't matter. And then pick the arc over here. Okay, that's why I had to put that dimension back on, that radial dimension back on the arc, because it won't move, the circles won't move over to the arc unless the arc has one of these dimensional constraints on it. That's why we had to add those dimensions back. Now you should have a pile of 3 of those symbols here, and 1 up here. I have to move this circle, don't I? Okay. Pick the arc. Okay, and 1 over here. So you have a pile of 3 of them here, 1 over here. At the bottom of 8-31, we find we have to use some special dimensions to get this little tiny circle in place. Click the triangle under Linear and select Horizontal and turn the page. Select the center point of the arc on the left. Well, that's right here. And select the circle and place this linear dimension and change it to 48. Okay, so that's how far over we want to bring the circle, right? The next dimension is going to be a vertical dimension. That's the one that's going to bring the circle up to here. Okay. So you select the triangle and you select vertical. Same thing. Select this center point. Sometimes you have to actually, nope, I need to be here. Select this center point and the circle and place my vertical dimension. So what value would I type in here to bring that circle all the way up to here? What value would bring this line all the way up to this line? Yes, 0. And enter. Okay. So this half of the drawing is finished. You actually get to draw this whole figure all over again. When I open your drawings, no matter how you may have saved it, you might have saved it with all this stuff turned on, but when I open your drawings, it's automatically hidden. It looks like that. Okay. Then I open your drawings and I do a show all for the symbols and I start counting all these little symbols. You need to have probably at least 15 of them. So that's it for that one. Now on page 8-34, they want you to draw the same thing using a different method. Okay. And that is right here. They want you to use this button called Infer. They want it turned on. They also want Ortho turned on. That's this one. And Object Snaps, it's already on. Okay. Select the line command. I should probably be on my construction layer. Okay. Back here. Oops. Select the line command and draw something like you see on page 8-34. Okay. This is a much quicker method of drawing this part. Because Infer was turned on, it automatically added a horizontal and perpendicular constraints and symbols. When you put the arc in, A and enter, start, middle, end, it automatically added coincident symbols. Select tangent, select the arc, and then the line on the right. Okay. Even though the book might say the line on the left, I know it did in the last version, it's the line on the right. Those actually are the main symbols that I'm looking for when I check this part of the drawing. You may have a lot more, or you may not. But if you have these, I will know that you used the Infer method to draw this one. We do have to finish the part. On page 8-36, you have to add all these linear dimensions. Lots of them. Okay. Oops, right-click and select Object. Linear, right-click, Object. 96. The top is going to be 60. Oh, why do I always forget to right-click and select Object? Left side will be 30. And the right side will be 20. Right-click Object. Okay. Also, re-add that radius of 15 if you need to. I need to. Okay. All right. Page 8-37. MI will get me into Mirror, MI and enter. Select just the top two lines and the arc, just those three things, and enter. And then select the two endpoints of the bottom line for your mirror line and enter. On page 8-38, you will use a special arc, center, start, end. So I do need to go to the Home tab. Select it from the list. Center, start, end. Okay. So here's the center. You just have to make sure your start to your end moves counterclockwise. Here to here. Get the arc again. Center, counterclockwise. Start, end. Get match properties. Get something blue over here. And put the outline on the object layer. Be sure to leave these construction lines here. This one, that one, that one, and that one. Otherwise, those easy for me to say. Otherwise, those perpendicular symbols that I will be looking for will disappear. I don't care how you do the circles. You can say, oh, I'm going to get a diameter. I'm going to be already on the object layer. I'm going to get a diameter circle, and I'm going to put one right here that has, oh, that was a radius circle. That's bad. Put one right here with a radius of 20. I'm going to put one here with a radius of 20 and here with a radius of 30. Or you could draw them the way you did over here by using the constraints. It doesn't matter on this one because I'm not looking for as many symbols. I'm just looking actually for 6. I'm looking for horizontal and then 1, 2, 3, 4 perpendiculars and a tangent. Okay. So finish this side with all the circles that are on the first figure and then turn in this drawing in the drop box that says Chapter 8 because I do have to select or check this one electronically so I can count up all these little symbols and things. Let's see, that was 48. 48 and 48 are 96. So that very last circle, I could shift and right click and get midpoint and put a circle right there with a diameter of 10. Woohoo! Okay, this one's done, ready for its final save. Good luck on this one.